The late afternoon sun drenched Liam's backyard in a warm, golden glow, turning the surface of his kidney-shaped pool into a dazzling, undulating mirror. He floated on his back, eyes closed, the gentle lapping of the water against his ears, a balm to the week's stresses. This pool, built by his grandfather in the early 70s, was more than just a place to cool off. It was the heart of his home, a sanctuary Liam had inherited along with the quirky, rambling house that sat on a generous half-acre lot. Every summer it was where he found peace, where his daughter Lily shrieked with delight, and where the neighborhood kids, for a brief, glorious period, forgot their screens. A sudden, sharp ahem shattered the tranquility. Liam's eyes fluttered open, blinking against the sun. Standing by the low, decorative wrought iron fence that separated his property from the immaculately manicured lawn next door was Karen. Her arms were crossed, her posture rigid, a clipboard clutched tightly in one hand. Even from the middle of the pool, Liam could practically feel the condescension radiating off her, Karen Peterson. The name alone was enough to make most residents of the Sycamore Creek Estates development clench their jaws. HOA president, self-appointed, arbiter of taste and order, and the undisputed queen of passive-aggressive neighborhood surveillance. Her own yard was a testament to surgical precision, not a blade of grass out of place, every rose bush pruned to within an inch of its life. Liam, with his slightly overgrown herbs and the occasional stray leaf in the gutters, was her personal nemesis. "Good afternoon, Karen," Liam said, forcing a cheerful tone he didn't feel. He paddled to the edge of the pool, hoisting himself out with a practiced ease, grabbing a towel. "Enjoying the weather?" Karen's thin lips barely twitched. "Mr. Davies," she began, her voice crisp and formal, like freshly pressed linen. "I believe we need to discuss a rather pressing matter concerning your property." Liam sighed internally. Here it came. "Is this about the rogue dandelion by the mailbox again?" he quipped, trying to lighten the mood. Her eyes narrowed. "This is not a joking matter, Mr. Davies. As you know, the Sycamore Creek Estates Homeowners Association has recently updated its bylaws to address inconsistencies in property aesthetics and usage." She tapped the clipboard with a perfectly manicured nail. "Specifically, Section 4.7, Subsection B, Recreational Water Feature Compliance." Liam felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd seen the email about the new bylaws, but like most residents, he'd skimmed the endless legalese, assuming it was more common-sense stuff about loud parties or neglected trash bins. "And what about my pool, Karen?" "Your pool," she enunciated, as if the word itself was a vulgarity, "is in direct violation of the new setback requirements. Furthermore, its current size and vintage aesthetic are deemed detrimental to the harmonious visual integrity of the community." Liam stared at her. "Setback requirements? Karen, this pool has been here since before this HOA even existed. My grandfather built this house in 1971, and the pool went in 2 years later. It predates your harmonious visual integrity by decades." "Ignorance of the bylaws is no excuse, Mr. Davies," she countered, her voice rising slightly in pitch, a sign she was enjoying this. "The new bylaws apply to all properties within Sycamore Creek Estates, regardless of their original construction date. Our legal team has ensured its enforceability." She pulled a folded sheet from her clipboard. "I'm afraid you've been assessed a fine of $500 per day. Effective immediately until the pool is brought into compliance, or, as we recommend, removed entirely." Liam felt a sudden, cold dread wash over him, cutting through the pleasant warmth of the sun. $500 a day? Are you serious? That's outrageous. This is my home. This is my property. "It is also part of a meticulously planned community, Mr. Davies," Karen said, a triumphant glint in her eyes. "And we have a responsibility to uphold property values and maintain standards. Your pool, quite frankly, is an eyesore, a relic. It attracts undesirables. She glanced pointedly at a deflated pool float shaped like a giant donut. Liam felt a surge of pure fury. Undesirables? Those are my daughter's friends? You think my family is undesirable? I think your pool is a non-conforming structure that violates community standards, she corrected icily. You have exactly 30 days to submit a plan for its remediation or removal, and the fines will continue to accrue. Consider this your official notice. She held out the folded paper. Sign. Here, acknowledging receipt. Liam's hand trembled as he took the paper. The fine felt like a physical blow. $500 a day, 30 days. That was $15,000. For his pool. For his pool that had been there for 50 years. He looked at the fine print, the legal jargon swirling before his eyes. Each word, a barb. He looked up at Karen, her face a mask of smug satisfaction. He knew he had to push back, but he also knew Karen had a reputation for crushing dissent. She'd successfully sued 2 other homeowners for minor violations, forcing them to sell their homes. This is an abuse of power, Karen, he said, his voice low, a tremor of suppressed rage in it. It's community enforcement, Mr. Davies, for the greater good. Perhaps you should have attended the last HOA meeting. The vote was unanimous, save for a few abstentions. She knew perfectly well Liam worked long hours and rarely made the midweek evening meetings. She finally turned, her shoulders squared, and walked back towards her pristine property, leaving Liam standing there, dripping wet, clutching the notice like a death warrant. The golden light of the setting sun suddenly felt cold, the cheerful splash of the pool a mocking echo. Over the next few days, Liam's home, once his sanctuary, became a battleground. He called the HOA management company, only to be met with polite but firm reiterations of Karen's decree. He spoke to neighbors, some sympathetic but none willing to openly challenge Karen, fearing her retribution. "She's got eyes everywhere, Liam," whispered Mrs. Henderson from across the street, a kindly woman who secretly brought Liam homemade cookies. "She lives for this stuff. Just do what she says." But Liam couldn't. This wasn't just about the pool. It was about his grandfather, the man who'd taught him to swim in those very waters, who'd told him stories about building the house with his own hands. It was about Lily's laughter, echoing off the tile. It was about his right to his own property. A right, he felt, was being trampled. He spent hours poring over the new bylaws, his eyes glazing over with legal jargon. He found the section Karen cited clear as day. Any recreational water feature, existing or new, must adhere to a minimum 5-foot setback from all property lines and be no larger than 200 SQFT. Liam's pool, a generous 400 SQFT, sat barely 3 feet from the fence line in one corner, a quirk of its original 1973 design. By the new rules, it was a monstrous violation. The fines began to accrue. Every morning, a new notification in his inbox, crisp and official, detailing the growing debt. $500, $1,000, $1,500. It wasn't just hypothetical anymore. It was real, tangible money bleeding from his account. He started having trouble sleeping, haunted by images of bulldozers tearing up his backyard, Lily's tear-streaked face. One evening, staring out at the dark, silent pool, a wave of despair washed over him. He felt utterly defeated. Karen was too powerful. The HOA rules too rigid. His own resources too meager. He thought about draining it, filling it in, just giving up. Then, a flicker, a faint memory, like a half-forgotten dream. His grandfather, Old Man Davies, a stubborn, self-reliant engineer with a twinkle in his eye. Liam remembered a conversation years ago after his grandmother had passed and they were going through old papers. "This land," Granddad had said, tapping a yellowed document. Not the house deed itself, but something else, something much older. tucked away in a dusty box. This land has certain protections. Before all these cookie-cutter houses started popping up, before all these rules and regulations, this was just open land, and your grandma and I made sure our slice of it had everything we wanted without anyone telling us different. Liam had been young then, distracted by a baseball game on TV. He'd barely registered the words, just nodded vaguely. But now they echoed with a sudden electrifying urgency. Protections. What kind of protections? And where was that document? His grandfather had been meticulous, almost obsessively so, about keeping records. Every utility bill from the 60s, every appliance manual, every tax return, meticulously filed. If he'd mentioned a special document, it would be somewhere. Liam moved through the house with a new purpose. He started in the small, cluttered study that had been his grandfather's, now Liam's home office. Files, boxes, old photo albums. He dug through drawers full of ancient receipts, dusty ledgers, and even a collection of vintage stamps. Nothing. He moved to the garage, a cavern of forgotten tools, paint cans, and gardening equipment. He rummaged through old tool chests, overturned stacks of newspapers, and even checked under the tarp that covered his grandfather's ancient, rusted lawnmower. Sweat dripped down his face, but a desperate, frantic energy fueled him. Hours later, tired and covered in dust, he found himself in the attic. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and forgotten things. Old trunks, moth-eaten blankets, boxes labeled Christmas decorations, and old clothes. He shined his phone's flashlight into the darkest corners, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and rising frustration, and then tucked away behind a stack. The dusty wooden crate felt heavy in Liam's hands, a palpable weight of history and forgotten hope. He carried it downstairs, his heart thrumming with a nervous excitement he hadn't felt since Karen's first hostile visit. He set it on his grandfather's old writing desk in the study, a desk scarred with decades of use and the faint scent of pipe tobacco. The whirring of Karen's sprinklers outside continued its relentless rhythm, a mocking reminder of the ticking clock and the escalating fines. With a deep breath, Liam pried open the lid. Inside, a chaotic jumble of papers, held together by brittle rubber bands, lay waiting. Yellowed invoices, faded blueprints, a dog-eared copy of a 1970s tax code manual, and countless personal letters. He carefully began sifting through them, the dust making him sneeze, his eyes scanning for anything that looked official, anything that hinted at protections. He found a thick sheaf of architectural drawings, intricately detailed plans for the house itself, meticulously labeled in his grandfather's precise hand. Among them, a drawing specifically for the pool, dated 1972, showing its exact dimensions and placement. He traced the lines with his finger, a wave of nostalgia washing over him. It didn't offer any legal leverage, but it reinforced how deeply embedded this pool was in the property's original design. Further down, beneath a stack of old warranty cards for appliances long defunct, he found it. A document, larger than the others, folded into neat thirds, bound by a faded red ribbon. The paper was thicker, crisper, with an official-looking seal embossed at the top. The title, typed in an archaic font, read, Declaration of Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions. Lot 17, Oakwood Farms Development. Oakwood Farms? Liam frowned. His property was part of Sycamore Creek Estates, but the address on the document, his address, was unmistakable. Lot 17. He remembered his grandfather mentioning something about the original name of the land before. The big developers came in. This was old. Very old. And the date. His eyes darted to the bottom. Recorded, October 12th, 1973. A jolt went through him. 1973, the year after the pool was built. This predated the Sycamore Creek Estates HOA by decades. His fingers trembled as he carefully untied the ribbon and unfolded the brittle pages. The language was dense, full of legalistic phrasing that made his head spin. He skimmed, looking for keywords: easements, restrictions, grandfathered covenants. And then he saw it halfway down the third page, a section titled Existing Structures and Improvements. He leaned closer, his eyes devouring the text. Notwithstanding any future covenants, conditions, or restrictions imposed by any subsequent governing body, all structures and improvements existing on Lot 17 as of the date of this declaration's recording, October 12, 1973, including, but not limited to the residential dwelling and any ancillary recreational water features, are hereby deemed grandfathered assets, and shall not be subject to retrospective compliance with future building codes, setback requirements, or aesthetic guidelines which conflict with their original lawful construction and placement. Any attempt to enforce such retrospective compliance shall be considered a material breach of these covenants. Liam read it again, and again. The words seemed to jump off the page, crystalline and powerful. Grandfathered assets, not subject to retrospective compliance, material breach. It was all there. His grandfather hadn't just built a pool. He'd secured its legal immunity, enshrined its existence in the very bedrock of the property's legal history. A slow, triumphant grin spread across Liam's face, pushing back the despair that had clouded him for days. The whirring of Karens. Sprinklers outside suddenly sounded less mocking and more like a gentle hum in the background. He had it. The weapon. The forgotten defense. He grabbed his phone, his fingers flying across the keypad. He called his old college roommate, Mark, who was now a junior partner at a corporate law firm. Mark answered on the second ring, sounding weary. "Mark! It's Liam! Listen, I need your help! Emergency!" Liam quickly explained the situation with Karen and the HOA, the fines, the threats. "Dude, HOAs are a nightmare," Mark said. "Sympathy in," his voice. "They're usually pretty ironclad, especially with updated bylaws. Unless you can prove they didn't follow proper procedure for the vote, you're probably out of luck. And even then, it's an uphill battle." No, listen," Liam interrupted, his voice bubbling with suppressed excitement. "I found something. An old document. A declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions dated 1973. It says my pool is grandfathered." He read the relevant passage verbatim. Silence on the other end. Then, Mark's voice, suddenly wide awake, sharp. "Wait, are you serious? An original deed restriction predating the HOA, explicitly defining existing structures as grandfathered assets? Liam, if this is legitimate and properly recorded, this could be huge. This could trump their new bylaws completely." "It's got a recording date, October 12, 1973, Liam confirmed, holding the document up to the light. Okay, don't touch anything," Mark commanded, sounding like a detective on a case. "First thing tomorrow, you need to get a certified copy of that document from the county recorder's office. Make sure it's the exact same one. We need to verify its authenticity and its chain of title. If it holds up, this isn't just a defense, it's a counterpunch." A counterpunch. The words resonated in Liam's mind. For days, he'd felt like a punching bag. Now he finally had a chance to hit back. The next morning, Liam arrived at the county recorder's office before it even opened, the old document clutched carefully in a plastic sleeve. The air inside was cool, dry, filled with the faint scent of old paper and stale coffee. He presented the declaration to a bewildered clerk, explaining his unusual request. After an agonizing 20-minute wait, the clerk returned, holding a crisp official copy. "Yes, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice dry. "This document is indeed on file, recorded back in '73 just as your original states. It's quite comprehensive." She handed him the certified copy. Liam felt a rush of adrenaline. It was real. Undeniably real. He paid for the copy, his mind already racing, imagining Karen's face when she saw it. He drove straight home, barely registering the familiar streets. He emailed a scan of the certified document to Mark, who replied within minutes. "Liam, this is golden. Absolutely ironclad, assuming no subsequent amendments were legally executed, which is highly unlikely if you weren't notified. The HOA bylaws cannot supersede a pre-existing properly recorded deed restriction. This is a primary chain of title issue. You are, in legal terms, exempt." Exempt. The word sang in Liam's ears. He was exempt from Karen's petty tyranny. The $500 a day fines? Void. The threat of removal? Gone. He spent the rest of the day in a state of giddy disbelief, double-checking everything. He imagined presenting the document to Karen, watching her, smug face crumble. But he also knew Karen. She wouldn't go down without a fight. She'd twist, she'd deny, she'd pull out every trick in her rule book. He decided not to wait for her to send another fine notification. He would strike first. He drafted an email, concise and formal, attaching the certified declaration of covenants. He addressed it to Karen, copying the HOA management company and even a few of the more sympathetic board members he knew. The subject line was simple. Response to violation notice, Lot 17, pool. The body of the email was even simpler, but packed with legal weight. Dear Ms. Peterson and Sycamore Creek Estates HOA Board, I am writing in response to the violation notice issued on date of notice regarding my swimming pool at Lot 17. Please, find attached a certified copy of the original Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions for Lot 17, Oakwood Farms Development, recorded October 12, 1973, which explicitly designates existing structures, including the pool, as grandfathered, assets exempt from retrospective compliance with future regulations. As such, your recent bylaws regarding setback requirements and size limitations do not apply to my property. I kindly request immediate rescission of the violation notice and all associated fines. Failure to do so will result in further legal action. He reread it, a feeling of immense power surging through him. No threats, no emotional outbursts, just cold, hard legal fact. He attached the PDF and hit send. The moment he clicked send, a profound silence fell over his house. Karen's sprinklers had finally shut off. The sun had begun to set, casting long purple shadows across the yard. The pool, once a source of anxiety, now shimmered, defiant and proud. Liam walked outside, took a deep breath of the cool evening air, and smiled. He had played by Karen's rules, followed her paper trail, and found a weapon she hadn't even known existed. The ball was now in her perfectly manicured court. He knew she would react, and he knew it wouldn't be pretty. Karen Peterson was sipping her morning herbal tea, scrolling through emails on her tablet, when Liam's message appeared. The subject line, Response to Violation Notice, Lot 17, Pool, registered as a minor annoyance. Just another homeowner trying to argue, she thought, her lips tightening. She clicked it open, already composing her dismissive reply in her head. Her eyes scanned the polite, formal tone, then landed on the attached PDF. Certified copy, it stated, emblazoned on the digital document. She clicked it open. The title, Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, Lot 17, Oakwood Farms Development, immediately made her scoff. Oakwood Farms? What was this nonsense? Everyone knew this was Sycamore Creek Estates. Then she saw the date, October 12, 1973. Her perfectly coiffed eyebrow twitched. That was before Sycamore Creek Estates was even conceived. This was ancient history, irrelevant. She scrolled down, looking for the specific wording Liam had quoted. And there it was, under Existing Structures and Improvements. Notwithstanding any future covenants, conditions, or restrictions imposed by any subsequent governing body, All structures and improvements existing on Lot 17 as of the date of this declaration's recording, October 12, 1973, including but not limited to the residential dwelling and any ancillary recreational water features, are hereby deemed grandfathered assets and shall not be subject to retrospective compliance with future building codes, setback requirements, or aesthetic guidelines which conflict with their original lawful construction and placement. Any attempt to enforce such retrospective compliance shall be considered a material breach of these covenants. The tea sloshed in her cup, scalding her fingers. "Impossible!" she hissed, dropping the tablet with a clatter onto her marble countertop. Her face, usually so composed and serene, contorted into a mask of pure disbelief, then hardening into a fierce, calculating rage. Grandfathered assets? Material breach? This was ludicrous. She grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed the HOA management company. "Mr. Harrison," she barked into the receiver, "this is Karen Peterson. I've just received a preposterous email from Mr. Davies, Lot 17. He's claiming his pool is grandfathered under some ancient, irrelevant deed restriction. I need you to confirm this is absolute rubbish immediately." Mr. Harrison, a perpetually weary man who had dealt with Karen for years, sighed. "Ms. Peterson, I received the email too, and I'm looking at the attached document. While I'm not a legal expert, a declaration of covenants, if properly recorded and prior to the formation of the HOA, can indeed supersede later bylaws. It establishes a superior chain of title for specific existing features." "Superior chain of title?" Karen shrieked, her voice rising. "This is Sycamore Creek Estates. We have bylaws for a reason. We have standards. He cannot simply wave a dusty piece of paper from the 70s and disregard everything we've worked for." "I understand your frustration, Ms. Peterson," Harrison said, his voice flat. "But legal precedent in these matters is quite clear. If the original deed restriction for Lot 17 explicitly grandfathers the pool, then the HOA would likely have no standing to enforce new setback or size requirements retrospectively. Our attorneys will have to review it, of course, but on the face of it, Mr. Davies seems to have a very strong case." "No standing?" Karen's mind reeled. The idea that Liam, the scruffy man with the slightly disheveled yard, could thwart her grand plan for aesthetic perfection was unbearable. She had visions of her impeccably curated community crumbling, one non-compliant pool at a time. "This is unacceptable, Mr. Harrison. I want our legal team on this now. I want them to find every loophole, every technicality. This cannot stand!" She slammed the phone down, her chest heaving. She paced her immaculate kitchen, her rage building with every step. Liam Davies. He thought he was so clever. He thought he could just pull out some ancient document and defy her. She would show him. She would show him all of them. Karen spent the rest of the day in a flurry of furious activity. She called every HOA board member, her voice tight with barely suppressed fury, painting Liam as a saboteur threatening the very fabric of their community. A few, like the timid Mr. Jenkins, mumbled agreement. Others, like the quietly observant Sarah Chen, listened politely, but offered no firm commitment. Karen noted their ambivalence. Her phone rang late that afternoon. It was the HOA's legal counsel, Mr. Davies, no relation to Liam, a sharp-suited man with a reputation for merciless litigation. Karen braced herself, expecting him to confirm her suspicions that the document was a farce. "Ms. Peterson," Davies said, his voice grave, "I've reviewed the certified declaration Mr. Davies provided, and I've cross-referenced it with county records. I'm afraid to inform you that the document is entirely legitimate and properly recorded. Its covenants regarding grandfathered assets for Lot 17 are legally binding and supersede any subsequent HOA bylaws that attempt to impose retrospective compliance." Karen felt the blood drain from her face. "Supersede? Are you telling me he wins? Just like that? We can't fine him? We can't make him remove it?" "Correct," Davies stated plainly. "Under the terms of this original deed restriction, his pool is exempt. Any attempt to enforce the current bylaws on his property concerning that specific issue would be a material breach of the original covenants, as stated, and a court would almost certainly rule in his favor, potentially awarding him legal fees and damages. The fines you've already levied are null and void." "Damages?" Karen whispered, her voice barely audible. The thought of paying Liam Davies, of admitting defeat, was a bitter, unthinkable pill. "This is an outrage. How could such a document exist without our knowledge?" "It's a common issue with older properties predating large-scale development, Ms. Peterson," Davies explained, a hint of weary patience in his tone. "Developers often create master HOAs that assume blanket jurisdiction, but individual lot restrictions from original land sales can sometimes remain, especially if they were never formally extinguished through legal process, which is a complex and often impossible task. Your HOA likely acquired its authority over the Sycamore Creek development as a whole, but this specific lot carries an older binding encumbrance." Karen didn't hear him. Her mind was racing, her humiliation simmering. This wasn't just about the pool anymore. This was about her authority, her reputation, the pristine image she had painstakingly crafted for Sycamore Creek Estates, and for herself. "Thank you, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice eerily calm, the calm before a storm. "I understand. For now, inform Mr. Harrison to rescind the fines immediately, and prepare a formal apology letter from the HOA to Mr. Davies." Davies paused. "An apology letter?" "Yes," Karen snarled, the composure cracking. "A formal one. And then, I want you to research every single other property in this development. Every single one. I want to know if there are any other such grandfathered assets. Any other relics. Because if this is true for one, it could be true for others. And if it is," her voice dropped to a chilling whisper, "then we will find another way to deal with them. This is not over." The phone clicked dead. Karen stood rigid in her kitchen, staring out at the immaculate lawn, a predator cornered but not defeated. Liam Davies had won this battle, but Karen Peterson had just declared war. She would not allow her vision to be undermined. She would find another angle, another rule, another way to assert her dominion. Liam might have a grandfathered pool, but she had an entire HOA and a legal team and a relentless, unyielding will. She picked up her tablet, her fingers hovering over her contacts. It was time to call an emergency board meeting. This setback would only fuel her resolve. The real fight had just begun. The emergency HOA board meeting Karen called felt less like a democratic discussion and more like a war council. Her face, usually a mask of serene control, was taut with barely concealed fury. "As you all know," she began, her voice clipped, "Mr. Davies of Lot 17 has managed to circumvent our new bylaws concerning recreational water features." She gestured to a large projector screen displaying Liam's certified declaration, an almost grotesque image to her. "This grandfathered asset clause is an unforeseen anomaly." Mr. Davies, the HOA's lawyer, cleared his throat. "Ms. Peterson is correct. My team has thoroughly reviewed the document. It is legally sound. Mr. Davies's pool is indeed exempt from the current setback and size requirements. Any further attempts to fine him on those grounds would be futile and costly." A ripple of murmurs went through the small group of board members. Sarah Chen, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. "So, we've lost this battle then. We should apologize, rescind the fines, and move on." Karen's eyes, cold and hard, fixed on Sarah. "Lost the battle? Perhaps. But not the war, Sarah. While Mr. Davies's pool may be exempt from certain bylaws, his entire property is still very much under the jurisdiction of Sycamore Creek Estates. And as a direct result of this unearthing," she said, spitting the word out, I have instructed Mr. Davies to conduct a comprehensive audit of every single property in our development. The board members exchanged bewildered glances. An audit, Karen? Mr. Jenkins stammered. What kind of audit? A historical audit, Karen clarified, a predatory gleam entering her eyes. Mr. Davies's discovery indicates that other older properties may also possess unforeseen deed restrictions or grandfathered elements that conflict with our modern standards. This is a critical vulnerability. We must identify all such anomalies and, more importantly, identify any other existing violations on these problem properties that are not protected by such ancient clauses. The lawyer, Mr. Davies, looked uncomfortable. Ms. Peterson, that would be an incredibly time-consuming and expensive undertaking. We're talking about reviewing potentially hundreds of individual property deeds going back decades. Cost is irrelevant when the integrity of our community is at stake, Karen snapped, pounding her fist lightly on the table. We will find them, and when we do, we will ensure compliance, starting with Lot 17. She turned back to the board. Mr. Davies believes his victory makes him untouchable. He believes he can flaunt our rules. But there are countless other bylaws. Landscaping, exterior paint colors, fences, approved plant lists, even noise ordinances. We will scrutinize every square inch of his property and any other property we deem non-compliant. Liam, meanwhile, felt a wave of relief wash over him when the formal apology from the HOA arrived, along with a confirmation that all fines had been rescinded. He showed it to Lily, who clapped her hands with delight. "Does this mean we can swim again, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes wide. "It does, sweet pea." He grinned, scooping her up. "It means we won." For a few glorious days, peace returned. Lily and her friend splashed happily in the pool. Liam tended to his garden, feeling a renewed sense of ownership and defiance. He thought he was free of Karen's oppressive gaze. He was wrong. The first sign was subtle, a polite but firm notice about his mailbox. "The paint has faded beyond acceptable community standards. Please repaint within 7 days or fines will be assessed." Liam stared at the mailbox. It was old, sure, but faded beyond acceptable standards? It was a perfectly functional, slightly weathered mailbox. This was petty. Then came the letter about his hedges, overgrown beyond the permissible height of 6 feet at the rear of the property. Must be trimmed immediately. Liam had always kept them at a natural, slightly shaggy height. A privacy screen for his pool. Now, they were a violation. He found himself constantly checking his yard, scrutinizing every plant, every patch of grass. His leisurely gardening sessions turned into frantic, anxious inspections. He saw Karen, often, walking her pristine poodle. Past his house, her head turned conspicuously in his direction, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. She wasn't just observing, she was waiting. The fines began again. Not $500 a day, but smaller, insidious amounts. $50 for the mailbox, $75 for the hedges, $100 for a stray branch that had fallen into the common area after a windy night. Each fine, while minor on its own, was a relentless drip, drip, drip designed to drain his patience and his wallet. He went to the next HOA meeting determined to speak out. The atmosphere was colder than usual. Karen, at the head of the table, presided like a monarch. She unveiled a series of new initiatives, a beautification committee with strict new guidelines for yard aesthetics, a noise abatement task, force with tighter evening hour restrictions, and a common area integrity committee that introduced new rules about what could be stored visible from the street. Every new rule seemed designed to chip away at the freedom and individuality of the older, less conforming homes. Liam's home. During the Q&A, Liam stood up, holding one of his recent fine notices. "Ms. Peterson," he began, his voice echoing slightly in the tense room. "I've complied with the pool issue," But now I'm receiving fines for my mailbox and my hedges. These seem excessively zealous. Are these new rules being applied fairly and equally across the community? Or are they specifically targeting certain residents? Karen's smile was saccharine sweet, but her eyes were like chipped ice. Mr. Davies, the bylaws are applied universally. The Beautification Committee is simply ensuring that all residents adhere to the standards that uphold our property values. Perhaps your previous laxity in maintenance has made these new standards feel like a burden. Other residents, I assure you, are quite pleased with our efforts to improve the neighborhood. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the room. Unless, of course, anyone else here has a concern with maintaining the aesthetic integrity of Sycamore Creek Estates? The silence was deafening. No one spoke. Mr. Jenkins fidgeted in his seat. Sarah Chen looked away. Karen's control over the board, and seemingly over the general sentiment, was absolute. Liam sat down, defeated, feeling the weight of the community's unspoken disapproval, expertly cultivated by Karen. He was now the problem neighbor, the one who bucked the trend. As the meeting dispersed, a few neighbors hurried past him, avoiding eye contact. Only Mrs. Henderson lingered for a moment, patting his arm. "She's relentless, dear," she whispered, her eyes full of pity. "Be careful." Liam walked home in a daze. The crisp, clean lines of Karen's garden seemed to glow menacingly under the streetlights. His own yard, usually a source of comfort, now felt like 1,000 tiny battles waiting to happen. Karen wasn't fighting the pool anymore. She was fighting his entire existence within the community, and she was using every tool at her disposal. He had won the legal battle, but Karen had pivoted, adapting her tactics. This was no longer about a pool. It was about control. And Liam knew with a chilling certainty that this petty, insidious war was only just beginning. The relentless barrage of fines had turned Liam's life into a gauntlet of anxiety. His mailbox, his hedges, the slight lean of a garden gnome. Each triviality became a source of stress, a reminder of Karen's pervasive reach. He spent evenings, meticulously poring over the HOA bylaws, trying to anticipate her next move, feeling like a squirrel constantly looking over its shoulder for a hawk. Lily, sensing his tension, began asking why Daddy was always checking the garden, and the carefree splashes from the pool became less frequent as her friends, influenced by their parents' cautious whispers, started making excuses. Liam felt isolated, surrounded by a community that had either succumbed to Karen's fear or quietly aligned with her. One sweltering afternoon, Liam was trimming his now military precision hedges, sweat stinging his eyes, when he noticed Mrs. Henderson peeking over her fence. She looked frail, her usual cheer muted. "Liam, dear," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She's doing it to me now, my rose bushes. Says they're too vibrant and disrupt the uniform aesthetic. Fined me $50. My late husband planted those." Her eyes welled up. A cold rage, unlike anything he'd felt before, began to simmer in Liam's gut. It wasn't just him. Karen was expanding her reign of terror. He recalled her words at the board meeting. A comprehensive audit of every single property. And then a thought struck him, a glimmer of an idea. Karen's obsession with integrity and uniformity was her greatest strength, but it could also be her most fatal flaw. He remembered the HOA lawyer, Mr. Davies, looking uncomfortable about the cost and scope of Karen's historical audit. He also remembered Karen's almost fanatical devotion to her own pristine property. She demanded perfection from everyone, but she embodied it herself. What if, in her zeal to expose others, she had overlooked something in her own carefully constructed facade? Liam decided to pivot. He wouldn't fight her petty fines directly. He would fight her on her own terms, using her own weapon, the HOA bylaws. He got out his measuring tape. He started walking. Not just around his property, but around the neighborhood, with a casualness that belied his intense focus. He observed. He measured. He looked for anything that seemed even slightly off. Anything that might be out of compliance with the HOA's rigid rules. And he paid particular attention to Karen's house. He noticed the slight discoloration on the side of her garage, hidden mostly by a meticulously pruned ivy. He remembered a recent email about new rules for exterior material consistency. Then, he looked at her perfectly installed, gleaming solar panels. They were a recent addition, lauded by Karen as a testament to modern efficiency. But there had been an obscure bylaw update just a few months ago, pushed through by Karen herself, requiring pre-approval for any visible exterior modifications affecting the street-facing aesthetic. And Karen, ever confident, often bypassed the very bureaucratic steps she demanded of others. Liam spent a week researching, cross-referencing old newsletters with updated bylaws. He found the specific clause about solar panel installation requiring a formal architectural review board application and explicit written approval. He then checked the HOA's public records for such applications. There was no record of Karen Peterson ever submitting one for her new solar panels. It was a small thing, perhaps, easily rectified with a retroactive application, but it was a violation. And it was Karen's violation. She who preached integrity, who demanded adherence, who fined people for faded mailboxes. The irony was almost too sweet. He didn't send an email. He waited for the next HOA meeting. The community room was packed, hushed with the usual tension that preceded Karen's pronouncements. She stood at the podium, her posture impeccable, her voice radiating authority as she reviewed the latest progress of the beautification committee and implicitly chastised certain residents for their lack of cooperation. When she opened the floor for questions, Liam stood up, holding a printed copy of the solar panel bylaw and a screenshot from the HOA portal showing no application from Karen. He looked directly at her, his voice calm, clear, and devoid of emotion. "Ms. Peterson," he began, "I have a question regarding the enforcement of bylaws, specifically Section 6.3, subsection D, concerning visible exterior modifications." He paused, letting the formal language hang in the air. "As the HOA president, I presume you would uphold these rules above all others." Karen's smile tightened. "Of course, Mr. Davies. What is your point?" "My point," Liam continued, his gaze unwavering, "is about transparency and consistent application. We've recently been subjected to meticulous audits and fines for minor aesthetic discrepancies. Yet I've noticed a significant exterior modification on your own property, the new solar panels, for which, according to public HOA records, no architectural review application or written approval was submitted, as explicitly required by Section 6.3, subsection D. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Board member Sarah Chen leaned forward, her eyes wide. Mr. Jenkins looked like he might faint. Karen's face, moments before radiating serene authority, went utterly blank. Her eyes, usually so sharp, seemed to lose focus for a split second. "Mr. Davies," Karen stammered, recovering quickly, her voice a strained whisper. "That is a private matter, and a highly inappropriate accusation." "Is it?" Liam pressed, his voice rising, gaining strength. "When you're fining Mrs. Henderson for her rose bushes, when you're threatening my home over a faded mailbox, when you initiate a costly historical audit of every property to find minor infractions, is your own adherence to the very bylaws you champion a private matter? Or is it hypocrisy?" The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The murmurs in the room grew louder, no longer hushed, but angry. People turned to look at Karen, then back at Liam, then at the solar panels visible from the meeting room window if they craned their necks. Karen's face flushed a deep, angry red. "This is a personal attack, an attempt to derail our progress." "No," Liam countered, stepping forward, his voice now ringing with conviction. "This is about justice. You used the HOA to weaponize rules, to bully residents, all because you couldn't stand a 50-year-old pool. You preached integrity while conveniently ignoring your own adherence to the rules. If the rules apply to my faded mailbox, they apply to your unapproved solar panels and to everyone's property. Either we all follow the rules or none of us do. Sarah Chen stood up, her face resolute. Mr. Davies has a point, Karen. We, as a board, must ensure fair and consistent enforcement. If this accusation is true, it undermines everything we stand for. The room erupted. Other homeowners, emboldened by Liam's defiance and Sarah's support, started speaking up. My fence, too. She made me replace it. My birdbath was inconsistent. The tide had turned. Karen, for the first time, looked truly cornered. Her face was pale, her carefully constructed composure shattered. The murmurs became shouts, directed at her. "This meeting is adjourned!" Karen shrieked, her voice cracking, her authority crumbling around her. She grabbed her bag and stormed out of the room, leaving the stunned board and the enraged homeowners behind. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Sarah Chen, backed by a growing coalition of fed-up residents, called an emergency meeting to vote on Karen's removal from the HOA board. The historical audit was immediately suspended. The small, petty fines against Liam and Mrs. Henderson and countless others were revoked. Karen, exposed and humiliated, didn't even attend the meeting where she was unanimously ousted from her position as HOA president. Weeks later, the summer sun still shone brightly over Sycamore Creek Estates. Liam floated peacefully in his grandfather's pool. A gentle breeze rustling the leaves of his slightly shaggy but no longer violating hedges. Lily was splashing happily with her friends, their laughter echoing freely. And somewhere Karen Peterson was likely staring at her unapproved solar panels, now a glaring symbol of her own hypocrisy, wondering how a simple, old deed and a stubborn neighbor had managed to wash away her entire reign. The community had seen through her veneer of order, finding the true integrity in freedom and fairness. Justice, in the end, had bubbled to the surface.